And also, I just was so keen on being married and pleasing the person. You know, you always want to please them. And then when they have rages and arguments, you always think, well, I'm the one that can understand him more than anybody else.
Right.
I'm big enough. I'm big enough to understand this behaviour. I'll put up with it. Suddenly get papers and I'd say, oh, sign this. You know, I'd sign it and he'd go, oh, that's great. And then I found out it was like £150,000 loan. You know, to find someone that seems like he's going to really take care of you is very attractive to someone vulnerable. And I really was vulnerable emotionally. And that's when I realized women need to get together and be strong.
From my heart, I wish you so much love and so much joy in your future. Hello, everybody. Welcome to How to Have Extraordinary Relationships. This is a one-off podcast. Today, I'm going to talk to Mary from Camden in London, who has very bravely and generously offered to talk to me about her coercively controlling relationship. So that everyone that's interested in that, that's coming to the webinar or isn't coming to the webinar, but wants to hear someone's story, this is the story for you. So welcome, Mary, and thank you so much for coming to the podcast. Hi. So, I mean, let's just dive in. Do you want to tell a bit of history to this relationship that you have come to realize is coercively controlling?
Well, I think the main thing about it is that you don't understand till you've really finished. That was the main thing I found out. I didn't really know how deeply entrenched I was in it until it was over, because you have these, a word you said earlier to me, goggles, which you sort of are in denial about lots of things, because it's the only way of human beings as we cope. You know, we cope by kind of deluding ourselves slightly. But what happened was that it's the first relationship I've ever been in where the man has really chased me, which looking back, well, that's nice. But, it was, I always thought, God, I've met someone that likes me much more than I like him. And this is like, what an amazing feeling. I felt like the kind of queen and he was sort of, worshipping me. And and that really suited my ego. But the thing was, I think it happened really slowly. That's the thing I want to tell people. People say it happens fast, but for me, it happened slowly. Things like, he really liked I got married to the man, and he really liked my family at first. And then he fell out with them. And then it was like always bitching about them. So he sort of, I mean, I know I had difficulties with my mother, but he sort of really put me off my mother. He went off all my sisters. I've got 3 sisters. He used to call me jokingly when we first married. He used to say, you're a murderee.
You're a murderee? What did he mean by that?
You're someone that would be murdered.
Oh my gosh.
It was a joke.
Yeah, not funny.
We'd have rows. The next day I'd find my bank card wasn't in my purse, and he'd taken it, and it meant, I mean, that is coercive control. He took, my finances. When I'd worked as an artist before I married him, and I'd been in charge of my own finances. But when he met me, he said, "I'll save you. I'll be in charge. Don't worry." Blah blah blah. So he got me to go and get a kind of full-time job, and I kind of gave my kind of wage packet over to him. I kept a little bit for myself, and looking back, you know what I mean? Again, it was like I gave everything to him and he was in charge. And the thing was also, this was 30 years ago, and things weren't so people weren't aware of, there wasn't even the word coercive control.
Yes.
There's nothing I could sort of hook it on or compare it to,
No.
And also, I just was so keen on being married and pleasing the person. You always want to please them. And then when they have rages and arguments, you always think, well, I'm the one that can understand him more than anybody else.
Right.
I'm big enough. I'm big enough to understand this behavior. I'll put up with it. He wouldn't let me have a credit card, which since I got divorced from him, apparently is illegal. And he also took out loans, which I wasn't very aware of. Again, he'd sort of suddenly get papers, and he'd say, "Oh, sign this," I'd sign it, and he'd go, "Oh, that's great." And then I found out it was like £150,000 loan.
Let's just rewind a bit. How old were you when you met this person?
28, 29.
You're 28 and 29, and what you've said is that I'm just doing this to help listeners, that you were delighted and your head was turned because he chased you.
Yeah, he chased me, and also he socially was in a different genre to me, and he was attracted to, it was a very, very strong attraction, because he wanted what I had, which was wild bohemianism, and I wanted which was posh and knew that world which I hadn't been in. And he chased me and love bombed me. Yeah, carry on. And next
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
So that stage one is love bombing.
Mm.
And there's something that happens between the two people, isn't there? And although it takes a long time to get to the controlling bit, the first bit feels, I think, very magical. Did it feel like that for you? Like, oh my goodness, suddenly God's come down and given me the tablets from heaven, finally.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I really, really, the main thing I wanted was to get married. My motivation was to meet the right sort of man. And he ticked all the boxes in the way that he'd been to the right school, he'd been to right university, you know what I mean? And the image of what I wanted. So I sort of bypassed red flags, because I did
Right.
notice a few before we got married, but I did negate those, thinking, no, come on, this is this man ticks every box. So women are a bit box ticksing when we meet men, aren't we?
Yeah.
We want a provider,
Yeah, especially if we've got a motivation. So what were looking back? I know that, look, anyone that's listening to this, I know there's always hindsight, but this is a learning podcast. So what were the red flags that kind of waved a little bit and you thought, no, 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 I'll love him out of that, or we'll be fine? Or
Well, our second date, he got out a pen and paper and started writing lists.
what was he writing lists of?
How for me to do my career, or where we should go here, there. You know what I mean? He liked writing lists for everything, but it was like he suddenly got terribly involved with my career immediately. And it was like, and telling me how to do my job, because I was self-employed performer, and and how I should work out the money. You know what I mean? Like, people shouldn't get as much, and her job should be this, and oh, I know people that can help you do this and that, and you've got to get it, and he had all these ideas, and it was like, hang on, I should have said, hang on a minute, this is my thing,
Yes.
But he kind of led me through he had a very, very, very strong personality, very strong and very charismatic, I'd say.
And you probably felt that was also him trying to support you and believing in you and cheerleading for you. I mean, that's also, on one hand, it's a green flag. There's part of you that probably thought, well, this is wow, he's really motivated about my career. So when did it? So the first bit is the love bombing, and that can go on for quite a long time. Where the person gets very enmeshed in their relationship. There's a grandiosity to it. We love
enmeshed immediately, if you think about it. That list, you know what I mean? And then I sold my house, so I had to move in only for a few weeks. And also I said a thing where we mustn't live together, because the mistakes I'd made before was I'd lived with two men before him, and once you move in, it sort of slopes into a sort of everyday relationship. I was like, no, we've got to get married to make this you know what I mean, to make it happen, as opposed to, just like, oh, we're going out and we might get married, and so I sort of I didn't force him to get married, but that was my end goal, you know what I mean? And so I let other things slide, like things like I saw him lose his temper badly twice, not at me at first, but with other people. And I saw him drinking very heavily as well. And even though I was a massive party person, I remember thinking, God, he's, drunk too many, just too much, I was just quite shocked.
Did anyone say anything when you said to parents, friends, family, I'm going to marry this person?
They were so happy. They were so relieved that I was getting married. Relieved was the word, because they used to say, you're too wild and extraordinary for any man, you know, because they weren't great supporters of me. And I think having a home where I came from, where I had a difficult relationship with my mother, my father wasn't around. So, you know, to find someone that seems like is going to really take care of you is very attractive to someone vulnerable. And I really was vulnerable emotionally. Yeah.
You're emotionally vulnerable. And so no friends said, you know what, Mary, I'm not quite sure about.
Yeah, they did.
They did.
Actually.
Okay, so a couple of friends bravely stepped
Yeah.
in and said,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we don't.
One said, he's too straight for you. And I said, well, you don't realize he's the maddest person I've ever met. And then another person just said, oh, he's a bit of an idiot. You know, what do you want with him? You know, because he turned at a party and it was all my kind of cool friends. And he walked around the room saying, hello, I'm a Hooray Henry. I'm a Hooray Henry. And everyone thought that was sort of a bit ridiculous, you know. But I think he was nervous about meeting these rather cool people. So he kind of turned it on his head, you know.
So when did it all start going wrong? You get married, you're in the dream.
Really, the first year, I just hated being married. I suddenly realized, shit, I have to go home every night to see this person. I'm so used to my loss of freedom was such a big thing because it really felt like I had to go home. It sort of my relationship changed, you know what I mean? And you know, I had to be at home, you know, I had to be there for him. I mean, that's one thing I'd say, that if you look out for a man or a woman who whatever, or a partner who wants complete loyalty, that's a massive red flag. He
Okay.
wanted 100% loyalty, which
And
meant,
what did he mean? Yeah, sorry, carry on. Yeah.
well, loyalty meant, you know, you're not allowed to bitch about me. You're not allowed to ask friends what you think. You're not allowed, you know. And one by one, he got rid of, you know, he didn't like the people. What I found was he didn't like people, friends of mine who had boundaries. He only liked my friends that had no boundaries.
Mm.
He liked people who were sort of easygoing, like, oh, yeah, great types, you know, so he could sort of be in charge. And my best friend was like the sort of friend who would say, no, I don't like that. He decided he didn't like her and she didn't like him, you know. So it was like he got rid of he didn't like anyone who would whisper in my ear, sort of thing. Didn't, you know, he wanted to have my ear, he wanted to have my all, he wanted to own me, I'd say.
And did you realize that at the time?
No, that's the whole thing. You don't.
Yeah, so at the time,
Very, very insidious.
yes.
It's really insidious. And then the physical violence came after about 2 years, you know, as well.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
I'm really, really sorry to hear.
And that was the time when, if you did call the police, which I did a few times then, they'd just say, oh, this is domestic. I remember one police woman saying to me, have you been drinking, love? And it was like, I'm not ringing you because of that. I'm ringing you because I'm scared, you know.
So he turned, and why would he become physically violent?
Arguing.
So the arguments escalated and ended up with violence.
Yeah. And usually to do with alcohol.
He would have drunk a lot.
Yeah. 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 But the main thing was that it was like he wanted control of my career, he wanted control of my money, he wanted control of my soul. But the one thing I would not let him control is what I wore. Very early on in the dates, he said, you're not going out in that, because I was going out in a nightie or something, you know. And I said, no, I will wear what I want. And that, you know, I really stuck to that, because clothes have been really, and costumes have really been important. But I wasn't very strong about other things. Also, drinking. When I met him, I was a massive drinker. And then the more he drank, the less I drank because I didn't like it. And then when I had a child like 3 years in, you really stop drinking then. You know, then I went to like, well, me stopping drinking was 3 glasses of wine a day. It was not much compared to his bottle a day or whatever, or more. And so I became the sensible one, you know,
Yeah, of course you did.
and that was boring for me. You know what I mean? It was like he was the one that would go off and do this and that, and I was always the one. I mean, I became a feminist the moment I had a baby. I didn't understand feminism before. Again, we're talking mid 90s. Feminism wasn't that big then. You know, you saw it as sort of 70s thing, not very cool. And then I was kind of a ladette, and I thought, oh, I'm one of the boys. I'm a big drinker. Hey, I love guys. You know, I was one of those people. You know, I love my girls and I love my guys, but, you know, they're great fun. And then as soon as I had a baby, I realized, oh my God, they can leave the house without thinking. We can't. Never, ever again.
Mm.
We are responsible for
Mm.
that person. And you know what? They're not, they think they are, but they're not really. Because as soon as my baby was born, he ran off to Tesco's to get me loads of fruit and nuts and all these things. And I thought, he can run off to Tesco's, but I will always be here with the baby. And that's when I realized women need to get together and be strong.
Did you still feel you loved him at this point? I mean, you probably didn't have enough distance. I mean, you know, you've had a baby, you're working.
I think it wasn't even ever really love. It was more massive passion we had for each other. It was beyond love. It was kind of, I was in the end, I think I was
Mm.
addicted to him,
Yes.
which sounds really odd, but
No, it is about that.
I was addicted to the drama of the relationship. And we were very attached in the way that there's this thing called the circle of violence, which is it's
Mm.
all really good, you know, it's all really good for 6 weeks. And then it suddenly starts building and building and building, and they start being more grumpy, 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 grumpy. And then the tension mounts. There's a massive row, maybe violence or taking cards away, or, you know, you're not coming to this, or some sort of cruel thing he did to me or I did to him. You know what I mean? I'm not turning up at this party. And then um, and then it's all, oh, we're, you know, then I felt terrible, like I was like so low, I couldn't, you know, I was so low, feeling that we weren't getting on. And then we met. Then the only way for me to feel better was to make it up. And we made it up, and it was great again, and I felt normal again. And my cortisone levels went good again, and then the build up would start again. So it was this cycle. And in the end of our relationship, it lasted 28 years. I was kind of pretty much bedridden.
Oh my word.
I was so ill, mentally and physically. I was a wreck, you know. I
That's
was ill all
terrible.
the time. One year I got 6 colds in a row. And I remember meeting friends and going, God, you don't look well. And my eyes were kind of dead. And I got this thing called sinusitis all the time for the last 5 years. And I'm really into Louise Hay. You look up and you find out, you know, spiritually what the meaning. It was
Oh, the
live
side
with
side.
someone you can't stand. Oh my God, this is. And then when I went to get divorced, which was after an incident, which was very, very bad. I can't even talk about that on there because it involves family, not me.
Mm. Mm.
Um, my lawyer, I went to lawyers and I said, look, I'd love to go to a mediator, not a lawyer really. And they said, actually, because domestic violence and serious coercive control is involved, and the nature of his character, you have to go to lawyers. And
Yes.
he could manipulate a mediator and manipulate you. So, I mean, I'd say his character is a prime manipulator. And one of the best things that ever happened was I contacted Relate,
Mm.
not Relate. Anyway, I contacted a domestic abuse charity, and I said, I really need a good book, because whenever I find I've got a sort of crisis, I go straight to find the book. You know, I'm like one of those Amazon people, you know what I mean? Like, I look up, you know, narcissist, I'm getting all the books, and they
Yeah.
said there's this book, and it did change my life, and it was called Why Charming Men Are Dangerous, Make Dangerous Lovers.
Yes. Yes. Never. Charm is something that I wouldn't put high on the top of my list.
And it was it was a kind of looking at if people get it, they'll see that three of the men in it are highly educated, went to top universities in London. I mean, in you know, Oxford and Cambridge. I'm just saying that often super intelligent men are the ones which I'm attracted to. I'm attracted to brains. They're really sexy, you know. But they are the clever ones who can manipulate you.
Did you feel there was gaslighting involved?
Yeah, constantly, constantly. You're attention seeking, you're stupid, shut up, you don't know anything, you're not educated, your family's like you know, it's really rude in a really horrible way. You know, your family are just like council house people, you know, nothing wrong with them, of course, but you know, he was just, you know, he tried to appeal to kind of like everything in me that, you know, all my insecurities. And I'd say the reason I really stayed was for the lifestyle. And I used to say that to him in arguments. I'd say the only reason I'm staying is because we've got gorgeous houses and go on gorgeous holidays. But in between, it was hell. Behind closed doors, it was hell. In the public eye, I looked like I had everything, and I did materially.
Mm.
But my soul was screaming. Yeah.
It must have taken a lot to leave.
Yeah, it did. It took. I mean, I was thinking about it for about a year during lockdown. I suddenly thought, I can't. By the way, I got long COVID, and that was because my immune system was so fucked from being with him.
Mm.
Um, but I just thought I can't go back to that life, that pace of life we had before, and those ups and downs. And during lockdown, there was an incident, as I say, to do with my family, and
Mm.
I got the nerve up to, you know, not, yeah, to finish. Yeah.
Was he shocked?
No, he wanted it to happen because he was told again by one of his lawyer friends that if I ever said got him in a room, he's been told never to be alone with me because if I got him in a room and said that he'd done violence towards me, I could call the police and say that he'd been violent to me, and because he's got history, he could go down. So he realised that it's better to divorce a woman who could do this to him, which was me.
Did he try to win you back?
Not this time, no.
Okay, so but there was a
Oh God, every time he tried to win me back. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
another
But this
path.
time, because he'd had legal advice saying, no, this woman's dangerous. She could, you know what I mean? I could have ruined him.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're the dangerous one suddenly, I see.
Oh yeah. Oh.
But there was a pattern of you say, I'm out. I don't want to be in here. And he would go back to the love bombing stage.
Yeah, but the love bombing got less and less because he just began to really, really despise me, I think, you know. I remember I um, had a 4 week holiday in Italy. We had, and he just didn't talk to me for 2 of the weeks, and he'd say, God, you're so boring, just get drunk, you're so boring, you're so boring, just get drunk, you know. And I just seemed like I was the only one holding everything together, you know. I was the one doing, I was like the slave, you know what I mean? I just had to do, you know, make sure everything happened. And he was like crawling around the swimming pool drunk, and I just lost all respect for him. I think once you've lost respect, that's when you know the relationship's dead, when you have no respect. And he had no respect for me, and I had no respect for him.
How, once you said we're out and you separate, how did you feel about yourself? Did you feel shame? A lot of people feel shame because they think,
I
how am
didn't know who I was.
I right?
All I did was yin yoga, this yoga where it's kind of like meditative poses, you just stay in them, and sort of just, and went on quite strong antidepressants, which really helped me get through. Got fabulous lawyers who were more actually better, even though they were good at their job, they mentally supported me. I really needed them because I didn't know right from wrong. I realized I was attached, very, very attached to someone that was bad for me.
Mm.
And I still, 4 years later, have moments when I think, oh God, maybe I should be with him. And then I
Mm.
get my sensible side, you know, that's the insecure side. That's the side that wants the material things, wants to be the princess, wants to be looked after, wants to be, you know, the Rapunzel in the tower, wants to be this sort of like cared for. And no, I've got to remember my sensible side. I'm trying to find my sensible side, which is down to earth, hardworking, and realistic, you know.
But also, it's the side that's advocating for you. But you might see a sense of it's the side that says to you, you do not want to go back into a relationship with a man who hits you, with a man who talk, because the difficulty with coercive control relationships, and I want to name this, is that however awful it is, when you're out of it, there are times when you miss them, which sounds completely bad.
Yeah.
But you
I
do.
miss the drama. I miss the excitement. I miss the house being lively. I mean, people, Michelle Obama this week going on about empty nest. I've got empty nest 500 times because I've lost man, children, and all my animals have gone. I mean, I'm literally, after being in this household where it was constant walking on eggshells. So that was sort of like, drama. I mean, I was addicted to drama, I'd say. And I am an actress. But the great thing is I'm putting it on the stage now as opposed to in my life.
Yes. I mean, how have you survived? How do you feel about you now?
I feel like I've only found this sensible side, as I call it, in the last month or so. The side that says get a grip, stop, mooning, stop, thinking, oh, what I've lost. You've got to think what you gained, which is sanity. I've gained sanity, really.
How did your friends and family react? Were people shocked when you said we're getting divorced?
People who were in our social life through him, which were 80 or 90% of them because they worked for him or were to do with him, and he didn't like my friends. So they were daytime friends. So we didn't really socialize with them much, apart from the ones with very low boundaries. They were shocked, but anyone that knew me said, thank fuck.
Right. So there were certain people who were watching it and thinking this isn't good.
Yeah, my best friend in France stopped talking to me for the last 3 years because she said, I can't hear this anymore. I've heard it for 25 years of you saying how deeply unhappy you are when you never, ever do anything about it.
Okay.
So I'm not dealing with you anymore.
And how
I lost that friendship through
has
to.
it come back? Have you?
Yeah. When I rang her, she was over the moon.
So I mean, I think she did a good thing. I think it's really good to call stuff out.
Mm.
But it must have been hard for you and your best
No,
friend.
what I did was again the denial thing. You've got this kind of like this lace kind of cover over your face, your eyes, your brain that just you can reason why it happened. You can kid yourself so easily in relationships.
What would you tell yourself then? What?
I'd say I wish I'd done it. I wish I'd left him earlier is my main thing, but I can't do that. I wish I'd been stricter with him. I wish I'd said to him, no, you stop drinking, we stay together. Because I do think if he'd stopped drinking, we could have maybe stayed together, and he'd done a lot of work on himself. But whenever he did do work on himself, he always found, he always grabbed things that would help him isolate me more. Like we went to family therapy, and he decided that our best friends, who were my ex-boyfriend, weirdly by coincidence, but they were our family best friends. We had Christmas, Easter, we went on holidays with them. Our children loved each other. He suddenly decided about 10 years ago that he hated him and that he was toxic and they were toxic, and he didn't want anything to do with them. So my children lost their best friends. I lost them. It was heartbreaking. And he always said, you can go back and see them. But then whenever I used to bump into these people or see my friends that he hated, I always felt in a rock and a hard place. And if anyone's listening, if you always feel in a relationship, you're in a rock and a hard place, that you're not being loyal to them, and talking to other people makes you feel bad, which is how I felt like, well, I'm talking to these people and I shouldn't be because he doesn't like them, then you're in a coercive relationship. If you feel what you're doing is not pleasing him, then they are the master. Yeah. But you're not, it's not in your consciousness. That's the weird thing.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. You don't see it when you're in it, or at least not potentially for quite some time.
no. And hopefully, when people listening to this, they might get a few flashes of insight into maybe what's happened to them, and hopefully not as dramatically as mine.
Do you, looking back at it, know where it started? When you look back at you when you met him, do you think, well, because what I'm saying to people is anyone can get into this. People think it's weak people that are getting into coercive control, but it isn't. But there's a set of sort of psychological wounds that come together, I think.
Well, I think that I wanted to be not having a mother, I wanted to be mothered. So I
Mm,
wanted a relationship where someone really took care of me.
mm,
Um, I also, um, but that was the only thing because the reason why it didn't work, our relationship, was because I was always battling against this man. I was always saying, but no, I want to choose where we go on holiday. I want to see my friends. I want to do this. I want to do that. So it was always underlying. It was always a fight. So
mm,
if
mm,
you're someone, but then I really feel sorry for people who let it happen more, and then they're kind of like, then they must, their whole personality must be taken away from them.
mm, mm,
And that's probably even worse for them. At least I kept my, you know, however low I was, I was still fighting on a low level for superiority or to win, or I'm quite a competitive person. I do feel sorry for people who maybe had a less strength of character and they'd become like the saints, which would just, and it would just destroy them.
yes. So you wanted to be mothered, you wanted to get married,
And I
you
wanted the status of being married. I mean, that's what I miss more than anything. I miss once you get divorced, you totally lose your status. And I now understand why gay people, you know what I mean, they're looking at like men, from like the top dog who runs the company, to the kind of quite feminine gay man. I can see why they maybe relate to women because we are the low status like them. We are the vulnerable ones.
Mm,
And women with a husband, you suddenly have their status. And losing the status has been very difficult for me, losing the homes, the status, and I think that women stay for reasons of they've got status in society.
mm, yeah. So what are your bits of what have you learned about yourself or about life? I mean, what's your takeaways from this?
It was good when it was good, and it was bad when it was bad. And all I want now is I don't want a boring man. I would like a relationship where I'd like a friend more than anything, a companion,
Mm,
someone. I mean, that's the tragic thing about this relationship was we did get on as companions. We did, and we had very similar interests, which is very sad because actually it could have worked really well. But his absolute fear of everything in life made him a controller. And so I just need to find a man who I have similar interests, e.g., walking, eating, traveling, um, art, all those things, and who will be my friend. And
mm,
I don't want that I would like love, but I'd like love to be a gentle love, a respectful love. Sorry, I feel like crying when I hear. I mean, I remember I had to do a list. I've done masses of therapy,
mm,
and you had to write all your values down.
yeah.
They gave me a list of values, and when I saw the word respect, it was just like it was glaring. It was like bright pink on the page, going wow, 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 wow. I realized all I want and need is respect.
Yeah. Is there a sense of shame? A lot of people that come out because, people get hit. People,
No,
people feel ashamed that they,
no,
in inverted commas, let it happen to them.
no, no, I don't. I'm quite proud of myself. I can come on this and do this. but I'm very proud.
Yeah. It sounds like it's been really painful, really difficult, and you've been really brave to
But it
do.
helps. I am quite a brave person, and that's why I feel for people that, if you're not brave, just get your friends around you, ask people that you trust what they really think of what's going on in your relationship. Um, if you have a good parents, I mean, I didn't. My mum just still says, "Oh, Mary, Mary, why did you leave him? You had everything, you had money, you had security, and now you haven't got so much." But I oh, I tell you just one last thing.
Mm.
The night that he went, what happened was when I first met him, I had very strong instincts. My stomach would flip over very easily if I didn't think something was right. You know what I mean? I was really, and it's never come back, just to let you know. My instincts have never really come back. I'm very damaged emotionally still,
Mm.
and I
Mm.
find trusting still very difficult. I
Mm.
don't know whether I trust a man yet, and it's going to take a long time to build for me to trust a man. But this dream I had was so vivid, and it's the one that I always go back to when I wonder whether I should have left him or not. And that is, I'm in the dream and he's walking towards me, and my stomach turns massively in the dream. I feel this massive thing, and I scream, "No!" like this in the dream. And I realize my soul is saying, "No way, you've got to get out of this."
Thank you so much, Mary, for letting us hear your story and how it's affected you and how you are moving forwards, which I think is very, very helpful for people to hear.
It's been really, really wonderful to be on, Lucy, and I'm really pleased that you invited me on. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. And from my heart, I wish you so much love and so much joy in your future. Because it's out there, right?
Oh, that's really
It's
nice.
out there.
Lots of love.
Take care. Thank you.